Okay, inshallah.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Okay, just it's going live. Give it 5 seconds. I'll let you know as soon as I get the green light. Okay, we're live.
Later.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لكونن من الخاسرين حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل نعم المولى ونعم النصير غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير اللهم اغفر لنا وارحمنا وأنت خير الراحمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to our regular Saturday sessions. Today we're beginning the sixth word. It's been following a very gradual and I would say methodical journey from the beginning of how to define ourselves, how to define existence, how to explain the reasons for our existence, to our attitude towards our existence, our behavior towards it, not just from a mindset or an ideological point of view, but how it should manifest in our practical lives. And the previous 2 weeks, we were discussing the significance of the prescribed prayers in relation to what they mean, not just in terms of dividing our life into religion and the rest of our life, but rather how does the concept of prescribed prayers, or the concept particularly being discussed of being aware and conscious of God, apply or becomes a basis for every action that comes out in our lives. So rather than religion or the concept of God consciousness being a parallel concept to our lived worldly life, it should rather be a basis or a foundation from which we develop every other aspect of our of our lived life. And today we're beginning the sixth word, and it will introduce to us another concept through a we can say like a explanation or a discussion of a verse from the Quran, forming written on the top. And from there on, we'll be introduced to new concepts and how to understand both those concepts and also approach the Quran in our lives. As usual, this is a discussion with all of you involved. At any time, if you have a question, comment, or a thought, please feel free to raise your hand. You can also send or type it in the chat box, and if you're comfortable, you can send it to everybody. But if there's anything particular, feel free to send it over as a private message, and we, inshallah, will be able to discuss it in the discussion today. With this, I will begin reading the sixth word. In the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Verily, God has purchased from the believers their persons and their property, that paradise might be theirs. And this is taken from Quran chapter 9, verse 111.
We don't see the, excuse me, we don't see the page all on the one side, it is cut off.
Okay, the whole page. Is this better?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, continue. No, on the right side.
Okay.
On the screen, a bit more. Yeah, that's perfect.
All right, thank you so much. If you wish to understand how profitable a trade it is and how honorable a rank to sell one's person and property to God, to be his slave and his soldier, then listen to the following comparison. Once a king entrusted each of two of his subjects with an estate, including all necessary workshops, machinery, horses, weapons, and so forth. But since it was a tempestuous and war-ridden age, nothing enjoyed stability. It was destined either to disappear or to change. The king, in his infinite mercy, sent a most noble lieutenant to the two men, and by means of a compassionate decree, conveyed the following to them. Sell me the property you now hold in trust, so that I may keep it for you. Let it not be destroyed for no purpose. After the wars are over, I will return it to you in a better condition than before. I will regard the trust as your property and pay you a high price for it. As for the machinery and the tools in the workshop, they will be used in my name and my workbench. But the price and the fee for their use shall be increased 1,000-fold. You will receive all the profit that accrues. You are indigent and resourceless and unable to provide the cost of these great tasks. So let me assume the provision of all expenses and equipment and give you all the income and the profit.
We don't see the page button, lad.
Okay. So we're reading from, you shall keep it until the time of demobilization. So see the 5 ways in which you shall profit. Now, if you do not sell me the property, you can see that no one is able to preserve what he possesses, and you too will lose what you now hold. It will go for nothing, and you will lose the high price I offer. The delicate and precious tools and scales, the precious metals waiting to be used, will also lose all value. You will have the trouble and concern of administering and preserving, but at the same time, be punished for betraying your trust. So see the 5 ways in which you may lose. Moreover, if you sell the property to me, you become my soldier and act in my name. Instead of a common prisoner or irregular soldier, you will be the free lieutenant of an exalted monarch. I know there's anticipation as to what happens next, so we will just read a little bit further, but I'm sure many of you can assume that one option is to sell and the other option is to keep or not to take this deal. After they had listened to this gracious decree, the more intelligent of the 2 men said, by all means, I am proud and happy to sell. I offer thanks 1,000-fold. But the other was arrogant, selfish, and dissipated. His soul had become as proud as the Pharaoh, as if he was to stay eternally on that estate. He ignored the earthquakes and tumults of this world. He said, no, who is the king? I won't sell my property, nor spoil my enjoyment. After a short time, the first man reached so high a rank that everyone envied his state. He received the favor of the king and lived happily in the king's own palace. The other, by contrast, fell into such a state that everyone pitied him, but also said he deserved it. For as a result of his error, his happiness and property departed, and he suffered punishment and torment. I'll stop here and go back to the beginning of this parable, of this story. So we immediately realized that, or I immediately, my immediate reactions to both the verse and the explanation was that I was curious and kind of wondering quite a bit about why particularly is an analogy of this trade used. Even in the verse, the word purchased is used, and property, it's, the vocabulary is very much like a selling and buying and a trade deal, so to say. So why make this analogy to a trade? What makes this a trade? What is the significance to us to think about it in terms of a trade? I think purchase, the word for purchase can also be understood as exchange or a barter, where one party or one individual gets does away with, or the object with him leaves him and goes to the other. So there is some sort of departure, or I don't want to say the word losing, but removing something from us to gain something else. So there's some sort of exchange implicit in the idea of a purchase, and which is implicit or pretty much explicit in this analogy. So my first question, and I'll type it in the chat box to sort of think about, is what is the significance to us in understanding in terms of a trade deal, let's say. Secondly, what came to my mind was that this deal seems very unusual. It's not a deal that I have in my life, in my daily, practical life, sort of seen or experienced, where something that I sell and or buy in exchange, or get in exchange of, whether I sell something and receive money, doesn't lose value over time. Whether I sell any item, even sitting money over time loses its value, even if you don't use it, for example, even if it is saved. Anything in our experience loses value. But in this particular deal, we notice that what I sell actually seems to increase in value 1,000-fold, which is to say a large amount, or a exponential amount. Two, or the other parts of this analogy that make it sort of unique in understanding is the fact that in this particular analogy, someone is offering to not only buy what you produce, or what you produce as a result of using the tools, but they're also willing to pay for those tools and cover all your sort of expenses and still buy your product, which again is not something usual in the way that we see anything in our life. Nothing in our life seems to follow this particular rule. So some of these things, obviously, for the sake of the analogy, are very particular to this particular of this deal, that we understand in terms of, we are understanding in terms of the words infinite. We are understanding it in terms of everlasting, unchanging, and so forth. So later in the story, or in this word, we come to get to know some of these words. But for the sake of discussion, I think it would be helpful for us to discuss on our own before being sort of explained by the author on what it means for us to, one, own our persons and property, and then to sell them, or to exchange them in return for something else. So from your own perspectives, it would be helpful for people to share what they understand from what the author could be alluding to when he's saying to sell one's property or one's persons, which in this case also relates to machinery and tools, basically anything that you hold in order for you to live your life, in order for you to go through life, that you may both employ for your sustenance, for what you think is your sustenance, and your own abilities and your talents and your senses that you use in order for to live your, or to go about your daily life. So if anybody has any sort of thought on how to understand, or how they may understand in the context of this analogy, what it means to sell your machinery and tools, your persons and your property is referring to. Dr. Ali, please go ahead.
Well, everybody should try to put their ideas and their understanding. I see that the silence is everywhere. So I just wanted to raise my hand to break the silence and start the, but Qasim, did you want to make a comment on it, on the question?
Yes, sorry, I was learning how to do a thumbs up. Yeah, I was gonna try to answer the question from how I understand it. I guess for me, it's not necessarily like completely getting rid of those items, but rather the intent for using them. So, you know, you can use those, as far as the analogy goes, those tools for your own desires or for their intended purpose. And I think that about sums it up in terms of how we should be utilizing what is there, what we consider to be our own property in the first place.
For Qasim, you're done, right?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, it's okay. I think for me, the very first sentence, not the very first, sorry, in the third paragraph, when he says, "Sell me the property you now hold in trust." I just, I feel like the word "you now hold in trust" is like someone is bringing it to my attention that you have something, but you're just holding it, like it's there with you temporarily. It's not something that you own, nor can you actually keep it. So the offer is basically to keep it for me, meaning that how I understood it is, look, you actually don't know what you have, you can't sustain it, let me just take it from you, or let me protect it for you, and then you will be able to benefit from it. So how does that look like practically? I'm not sure. But I think just basically on the awareness level to just be aware that, okay, I can't really say, for example, I am intelligent. It's more like I have intelligence for now. I'm not sure how to use it, when to use it, towards what. And I don't know how to keep it alive forever. And I just know that I prefer intelligence versus or over non-intelligence, for example. That's my reflection.
Thank you so much for everybody. So the 2 points that I heard so far, or we all heard so far, and I'll give the mic to Dr. Ali. I think it was an important point Qasim made that, and it made me think also, like in this particular deal, you're not even necessarily, but you're not at all losing anything. You still have those tools in this particular analogy. You still you still are in possession of all that you had before, but it is the intended use or the purpose changes, or that is the sale or the change as a result of acknowledging this sort of exchange. And the point that Radwa made was that eventually, or at the basis, she understands that she is not the owner of these of this property, and she doesn't necessarily know what to do with it either. And so it would be in her favor to entrust it with the one who is the owner and knows what to do with it, or how to best make use of it. We have a comment that says, one of the comments from earlier is that to perhaps sell one's person and property could mean to give up one's desires. It's a fair point, perhaps something that we can also discuss in further detail. And there's another point that says, can trade mean that they don't belong to me? I'll think about it a little bit. And in the meantime, I'll give the mic to Dr. Ali.
Okay, thank you very much. As an extension to what's said and what you said, and the other friends also said, first of all, when we concentrate on the verse itself, it is so interesting. The wordings and the way the verse addresses human beings. We have to understand, first of all, that the Quran, when we are reading, this is a verse from the Quran. So the principle of not only the Quran, actually, all scriptures, all divinely revealed books are speeches of God, and we understand that God speaks to human beings in their terms, the human terms, at their level. It's a beautiful to use the word purchase, as you said, as if it is something commodity and there is a trade and business going on. Yeah. And also the purchase is going to be held between, or it's being held. Actually, the translation says, Verily God has purchased from the believers. It should be, Verily God purchases from the believers, not in the past tense, although the verb is the past tense, but this is the principle of reading the Quran. Past tenses are not something to do with the past event. It is something to do with the real existence of the event, reality of the event. You can take it as if it happened. It is so sure. That is the language of the Quran. That is a bit technical knowledge, but we have to understand and know it. There is no past tense as far as God's speech is concerned. Anyway, God purchases from the believers. Now, the emphasis is believers. It means in this context, God is speaking to believing people, believers in terms of the definition of the Quran that believes in God, that they are created by a creator one, by a creator who is the creator of the universe. So even the believers, we think that, or I think that I am a believer. I mean, as if you ask me, yes, I am. So we believers, although we believe that we are created by God, but being created by God does not necessarily mean that I don't have my property. This is mine. For example, my personality is me. That's what I feel. That's me. Here I am. Created by God, but here I am. Do you see what I mean? It is a bit different. For example, if, I don't know, if something, let's say, okay, if a carpet is made by a person, let's say carpet has a consciousness. Carpet says, yes, I didn't make myself, but here I am now as a carpet. I exist as a carpet by myself, not by myself, as I am here. So human beings, whether they are believers or not, if they are not sharp, very precise in the definition of being createdness, I think that is how I am. Yes, I am made, but that is how I am. That is me. And also their property, it means my property. It means my hands, my mind, my eyes, my ears, my feelings, etc. That is with me. So it is an excellent example of the Quran that we have to bear in mind while we are reading and studying the Quran always. Not only the Quran, in fact, as I said earlier, all the scriptures. God, the Creator, speaks to human beings in order to guide them in their own reality or in their own state, how they feel it, how they should refine their feeling, how they should really change their feeling. It's a guidance, but the starting point is my reality. I think I am here as a person. I think I feel that I have some property. For example, I'm using my hand. I am using my mind. That is how I speak. That is how I really feel about it, unless consciously reflect on it and say that, yes, I am using it, but it is not my property. That is something else. That is the second stage. That's what the Quran is, or the speech of God is inviting us to become aware of it. This is, I'm just thinking about the verse. So although the verse is speaking to believers, because non-believers is not going to sell at all, well, because they don't accept that even they are created. So forget about them. They are the lost case. But if someone believes, still they have to make more progress in understanding that their personality, their property, which they have, needs to be questioned. So God says, I am going to buy it from you. It means you will acknowledge by returning your personality and your property to me. It means not claiming the ownership of your personality and your property, return the ownership of your personality, your property, to its real owner, who is the Creator God. Now he's inviting to come closer to this trait. But God says in an excellent way, it's a very beautiful and also and bright future for the believers. If you do that, if you don't only say, if you only don't say that I am created by God, but also realize that your personality, your everything belongs to Him, you are just using them as a result of the grace of your Creator. So God says, if you do this, this is a kind of trait now, I will give you paradise. It means as soon as you realize and act upon this reality, you will find paradise in your actions, in your realization. How? Because you have, if you like, you thought that they were your property, you realize now that they are not your property. They belong to their Creator. It is His property. You are not, you are only benefiting from them. You are the beneficiary. So you are just using, but while you are using, pay attention that it is not, or they are not yours. So you will use them as a trust given to you. So of course, if it is a trust, what will you do? While you are using it, you will use it not in your name. It is your real property, but it is the property of the Creator who created you, therefore created the whole universe. So as soon as you do this, you will start experiencing the paradise, because you will use it in my name, and my name means I am the absolute one. It means you will find yourself in the presence of the absolute one. You connect yourself to the absolute one. You get all your values from the absolute one. So for example, while I'm using my mind, while I'm using my eyes, for example, which the text further on will give these examples, I will say, this mind is not mine. These eyes are not mine. I must use it as a property of the one who created them. I didn't create them. I cannot claim it. That is the problem. Human beings cannot claim, any human being cannot claim that they created their own mind, their own eyes. They found them as they are now. But some people say they developed by themselves, but those people say, I'm not that crazy. So it's this perfect body is developed by itself, and billions of other creatures developed by themselves by chance. All of them are perfectly working. Come on, I have my own intellect. I'm not that stupid to accept this one. Those people who accept this idea, and they say, okay, it is created, but the problem is not only realizing that they are created, which is very easy to realize, by the way, but what is the essential problem is, yes, they are created, but they are mine. Now I'm using them. They are given at my disposal. Yes, they are given at your disposal, but as in the form of an trust. So you have to, we have to realize that I must use it with the consciousness of that they belong to their Creator. I must use it in His name by attaching it to Him, and also of course, you are going to discuss all together. We are going to discuss. We will work on his workshop. Yeah, on his workbench. It means I will use it as a means, as a tool, as a vehicle to realize who the owner of this property, and if I realize that it is the absolute one, infinite one, I will use it in order to know his qualities. That is the purchase. It means I am returning back all my claims to its real owner. So we should be careful after reading this verse. I'm just wrapping up. First, Quran speaks to human beings at their level, within their capacity, within the conditions of their experiencing the world, this creation. That is excellent to understand, to notice the principle of the Quran while we are reading it. We should never read the Quran from God's perspective. We have to read the Quran from our perspective, because Quran by definition speaks to me within my own capacity. That is excellent principle of reading the Quran. One of the principles of the reading the Quran. The other one is making the distinction between I believe that I am created by God, or the universe is created by God, who is the creator of everything, is one layer which is necessary. But if you stay there, not enough. Let me put it in this way: not enough. It doesn't much help. It doesn't help me much. But I have to understand that I don't own anything, even within myself, is even my own human qualities, everything, which is made in the verse property. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, for helping us understand what the significance of these such vocabulary is for us as readers or students, which, I definitely makes the verse very, very much, alive in our contexts, to be understood in these terms. I'll just sort of, I think you summarized your own points well at the end of your comment. And if anybody has any questions or thoughts or comments that follow up from what has been discussed so far, please feel free to express however you wish. From what I heard thus far, I will, point out certain points, and then perhaps go into another aspect of this analogy. So one thing that sort of does come to my mind, and I know many of you with me have been studying these texts together over the past weeks, and we realized, I was reminded also of the section that we read some weeks ago about the two soldiers on a journey, and one choosing a path without wanting to carry around any equipment or have any sort of responsibility to anything on that journey, presumably feeling that he's free and independent, and the other one, through carrying his kit bag and rifle, acknowledging that that his existence has a consequence, that it is connected, and so in carrying his kit bag, rifle, etc., he is acknowledging that his existence has a purpose, and he has to act within that purpose. And so a lot of those ideas also underlie this analogy here too, yet there's something different about it, which I'm hoping that I can also, with the help of everybody, come to understand, that there's fundamentals are the same, but yet there's something different also being communicated, something unique being communicated. So in this case too, the person at first realizes that whatever that they possess, in this case, your tools, your senses, your intellect, your body, your spirit, whatever that you think of in your possession, needs to be questioned, needs to be asked about, especially how did you get it, and two, what are you supposed to do with it? And in recognizing or in questioning this, one acknowledges that the what I possess, one, is not are not anything that I could have created. So their creator or their owner is not me. And two, their purpose cannot be based on what I decide, because I am not the owner of it. I am not the creator of it. So their purpose too must be, let's say, held or kept with the owner or the creator of these possessions. So not only do I have to first acknowledge and recognize the owner of these possessions, but then also learn from it, from him, or ask what the purpose of these, or find out from that source what the purpose of these, or how best to use these possessions. And the fact that I possess these in and of itself is an invitation for me to question and connect them to the rightful source, or the owner, and to make sure that they're used in the way that they were intended to be. Another point that caught my attention from what I heard thus far was the concept of paradise. That somehow it appears from the verse and the analogy that once you return, and in this case, in the case of this analogy, all what you seemingly possess, like there's no exception to what you possess that may not be returned. So when somebody returns all what they possess, and when we actually think about it in material terms, or in let's say secular terms, we can associate this idea of becoming extremely weak and vulnerable and poor, something that has no strength left anymore, no sense of identity or confidence, it would appear, that left anymore. But it appears that in this particular trade, which we describe to be a unique one, not of the nature of, it's with a seller, or with you're selling it to something that is not of the nature of this universe. Doing this, or through this trade, selling or giving away, or returning everything that you own or possess to this rightful owner, actually leaves you more profitable than you were before. It leaves you more secure and strong than you were before. And this sense, or this feeling, is what is perhaps I understood as being described as being in paradise. This moment of complete impotence, and defining one's identity in context to, or in the position of completely selling or acknowledging the source of your possessions and your existence, and returning it through your actions and your belief is what leaves one, or leads one, I should rather say, to paradise, or this sense of, or paradise in these contexts, or in the context of the analogy. I find it easier to use the vocabulary of the analogy of being eternally profitable, having no loss whatsoever, and there is no sense of change or declining in this deal. There is nothing that will change about this condition that you feel of being eternally profitable and devoid or safe, let's say, from any loss. And once this condition is eternal, this condition or this state is being defined as paradise. So maybe, Agube, I will rephrase your comment. I thought about it a little bit. Can trade mean that they don't belong to me? I think yes, if based on what we've discussed so far, that the necessity to trade or the necessity to return means that they don't belong to me. And that once I do acknowledge that I possess something, that I possess some qualities, I feel them or I sense them, I immediately am prompted to ask, where are they from, and what are they for, or what is their intended purpose, how to make the best of it. And that necessitates that I investigate investigate the source of them and investigate the use for them, or their intended purpose for me. Okay, so if we, I think that all these words sort of are prompts for us for further discussion. And for the sake of discussion, feel free, if, I'm also open to any comments where you feel that things might be repetitive or redundant, and that will help me, and I guess everybody in this group, understand where we can also challenge ourselves better to dig deeper into these words, or perhaps bring other dimensions that may not have been discussed in the discussions over these past weeks, or in this particular discussion today. So there's certain vocabulary, but that will repeat, and we'll get to the one that Dr. Ali mentioned, especially about the machine, the workshop, and the workbench. But before that, there's a condition that this author puts on this scenario, the one of being a tempestuous and war-ridden age. And I think we, in our conditions right now, have our own sort of conditions that we're living through, of a certain, instability is not a surprising condition for any of us right now. Change is not unfamiliar to anybody at this in this year, and things being unpredictable and inconvenient and so forth. And so too is the condition in which this deal is taking place, or this analogy is taking place. And so if we were to discuss, how does this contribute to one's decision, or let's say the decision that these two soldiers made. One of them decides to go ahead with it, to go ahead with, acknowledging, and the other, despite the, the tumultuous conditions, still has a sense that he can still, that these possessions are his, and something that he cannot do without. I have a few comments. There's a question. Can we discuss the phrase act in my name at some point? What does it mean to act in the name of all merciful? Thank you for that question. And Taya says, I think the trade is the acknowledgement, not that you are giving away anything away. We couldn't if we wanted to, but rather acknowledging the owner is the trade. Thank you, Taya. I think that's a fine point, that though worded as a purchase and a selling, and our understanding of generally purchases and selling has to do with doing away with something. In this case, what you're doing away with is this notion that you may have any ownership over what you possess. I think what you're doing away with, in this case, it appears to me, is the deed, the contract that may have your name on it to your possessions, but rather you're just changing the name. And this maybe also addresses part of what Radwa asked. You're just changing the name in which you are, in which you possess those tools, or whatever the machinery tools, your qualities, let's just say that. So you're just changing the ownership while you remain responsible in using those tools, in making the most of them, using as a means, doing whatever that you're doing before, which was to employ these tools as a means to understand your life, as a means to progress and develop through your understanding. And the only change that happens is that now you're doing it in the name of the one who is the rightful owner of it, rather than in anything else, in the name of anything else. And Radwa, definitely, as we are discussing this, today and in previous days, though we are not explicitly discussing in the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate, which is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If you would like further detail, we, in the first word, and their recorded videos, there are a number of discussions that we went into detail, like, just of these three words. But in our discussions today and so forth, we will definitely be touching on this, which is to say, in the name of God, the Merciful, the Compassionate. The one to say in the name is to, again, to attribute and return the ownership of whatever that exists to the one who created it, or the one who is the source of existence of those. And this is the first step in acknowledging the truth or the reality of of one's existence, or of existence, to say, what is this and how could it come into existence? And going into the steps of acknowledging or attributing it to its rightful source. And we discussed that the word merciful has to do with the one who satisfies man's greatest need. And very briefly, man's greatest need, or we have to investigate it and ask ourselves, is our need for things to mean something within this life and have a eternal aspect to them, which is that I want my life to have a meaning. I want my actions, my moments to mean something that does not end, and that is not, and is also perfect in its nature. And so the merciful is the quality that is manifested in the fact that everything contains this meaning, pointing to the eternal source of that thing. And as I mentioned, I'll be happy to share, or one of us will be happy to share the videos that will go into much, much more detail than we have the time for today. I'll take a comment and then read the comment, and then I'll get to Fariha, who has her hand up. Alia says, the outcome of this trade is, take off my shoulder the burden of dealing with transience of what I thought I own, anxieties, etc. Realize they're just tools given to me to connect myself to the source of permanence. Thank you, Alia. And I think you helped me address the words highlighted on the page, that inherent in the fabric of our existence is this uncertainty and change, which instills in us a certain, as mentioned, like anxieties, a sense of not being able to feel secure, because it's just not within this nature of this universe. Yet we have not only the desire for it, a sense for it, but evidence for it that we have felt and experienced in our life, or in our experience, in our daily sort of routines, but never are we able to hold on to it enough for them to not bother us, or not remind us that there's something there's something I cannot trust about. There's something that I cannot trust with with my life if I just let things be in the way that they are, like as if I am in possession of them or in control of them, because I find myself losing control, gaining it, losing it, gaining it. So of all the people, I can't even trust myself. So I do have the need to look for something that I can trust and hold on to without any feeling of uncertainty and anxiety. And in that search is this acknowledgement of the one who can be the source of this permanence. So thank you, Alia, for that very helpful comment. Faria, I know you had your hand up, so please feel free to share, even if it is something that we may have mentioned or discussed. Would love to hear.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was a little hesitant. Should I not? Because I feel that the verse is still very unclear to me. And Alia's comment helped a little bit, but I'm still working on it. So, these are very strong words, like how we mentioned also, verily God has purchased or bought. We question like, well, what do I own? Like what has, like what's going on? What kind of trade is going on? Like who's purchasing what from me, or who's buying what from me, right? Just like a general notion of it. So really, I was just a little bit caught up on what does it mean, this whole notion of purchasing. Like, I think it's really analyzing first within myself, what is it that I have? What is it that I own? And like all the comments are helpful in terms of, when we realize that it's not mine to begin with. And so I'm just using it in the name of the one that's giving me. But so then I was thinking, this is then like a process. I mean, this wording, maybe I don't know what is, maybe the way it's translated, it must mean something else or something more. Maybe I'm not seeing it. I'm having a little hard time digesting purchasing. Like, what is it? What are you purchasing from me? Because if I mean, I'm thinking different standpoints. Okay, so if I think, then I look into myself. Okay, it's given to me. This is not mine. So that's first step. It's not mine. So when I realize something is not mine, then I sort of look for its owner, or at the same time I look for, okay, but I'm using it. So, maybe because we use things, we use our whatever tools are given to us for whatever is it that we do, but then I think it's a matter of, I don't want to say utilizing it in the right way, but it's a matter of finding out who the owner is, because then if I recognize who the owner is, then I may be able to utilize it in the right way, but then purchasing. So if I recognize it's not mine, so who's purchasing what from me? It's more of a process that's going on within me. I don't know if it made sense, but just wanted to share out what has been going on in my mind. And at the same time, perhaps I think it's a good idea that we're just brainstorming on the verse before jumping into how the author is presenting the case. So inshallah, it should clear up. Thank you.
Thank you, Faria. It was all very needed, helpful, and I'm really happy that you feel very comfortable expressing things that you don't understand. And I think it helps me also to admit where I don't and where I do. So if I were to summarize your basic concern, which is you ask, your basic concern is regarding this analogy of being of purchasing. For example, you ask, like, what do I own? And if I recognize that I don't own anything, then what am I selling? What do I even have the right to sell? And if that's a clear summary of your basic concern, you can just give a thumbs up or thumbs down, and we can clear it out. So, okay, that's Dr. Ali's thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So the question we can start from is, what do I own? So as I was thinking while you were speaking, and I was thinking, what do I think I own, first of all? And basically, if I, not talking about material aspects, which really won't be helpful to us at this time, I just sit and I think, and I feel that what I think I own, or what I think I attach my identity to, is just saying I have a consciousness and I'm aware, and that's all I really have, and there's at the most that I can say. But that is what my perception is, that I think I own, or I think I possess or I know I possess a sense of awareness and consciousness. And I can have two options there. I can say, is that mine? As in, did I create it? Did I give it to myself? Which also needs some understanding of how I can give something to myself. Or did I just find myself with it, and I have no sense of ownership over it, but I just possess it, as in I'm holding to it like a backpack. And, I understand that I am equipped with it, rather than something that I created it for myself, or that it is some intrinsic part of me. I don't have any such sense for it. So once I realized that what I do have, what I think I do have, is actually just given to me, but was never actually mine, then I can be prepared to think about it as something that I can exchange or sell in this case. But as we said, selling is just renaming or acknowledging or attributing the rightful owner. And by way of acknowledging that this is not mine, but perhaps, and in fact given to me, I have sold what I thought was mine. Okay, so we have quite a bit of hands and comments. Priya says, my concern is, what am I essentially selling if I don't own it? Also, what is being purchased? Okay, thank you, Faria. Dr. Ali, your hand was up and your mic is open, so I think you're ready.
I think I spoke a lot, so give the priority to those people who want to speak. That's very important to hear them for me.
Okay, thank you so much. Radwa, you have your hand up, and Alia, you did too, so feel free to raise it when you're ready. And Radwa, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I think what Fariha said got me thinking when she used the word process. I think in the before going to the trade sort of agreement or even listening to this proposal, I would actually fight a little bit. I would say, well, if I don't own what I have, how can I own it? I wouldn't look for someone to sell it to. I would actually be inclined to find a way to own it. And I think in that I would be looking for ways to maybe, try to actualize what I own. And when I'm talking about normally, I like my traits, my qualities, my thoughts. I would try to actually be the boss of myself in a way. And then as I'm reflecting about it, if I do choose to be like sort of the manager of me and try to own everything I think I own or I want to own, then I would probably fail, because at some point my anxiety is going to overwhelm me, because every time I get to try to own my property, I will realize how difficult it is. And I will realize how I'm someone with a lot of needs and a lot of, let's say, potentials. And if I ignore, and if I only focus on my potentials and I try to work on them and try to manage them, and neglect my needs, I would visualize someone who's very anxious, because deep down on some level, I know I cannot manage my property. I just don't have that ability. When someone then would propose to me, well, why don't you sell it to someone who can manage it for you? I would probably ask about the someone. Is it someone who can manage it and fulfill my needs and, is always there and is not going to be someone who's fake? Or I would start looking for, I guess, someone who can secure my property for me. And then at that point, I can actually accept the trade. After, for me at least, I would accept it after observing or witnessing myself failing to be able to actually own my own property. Because I would say there is a desire to own my things and to actually control them and force them to be what I want them to be, instead of submitting myself to my reality, which is I cannot do it. I cannot actually own my property. That's all.
Thank you so much. So we'll continue to discuss Faria's question. And I'll go to Dr. Ali in a second. This is getting me excited, perhaps. And so one thing that I was thinking that maybe I did not particularly give it a lot of attention, which was that this analogy also starts with the idea of like the king, and I've highlighted it, entrusted each of his two subjects within his state. So, it started off by no one owning anything, but both of them being given something. And then came the step of, you know, us or the individuals having an option to attach ownership to themselves or to transfer that ownership back to the king, though it was in their possession. So just a point to keep in, that came up that I think would be helpful as we continue to understand what we are selling if we don't own it. Dr. Ali, please go ahead.
As you said it, we don't own anything. It's then realization that I don't own anything. Okay. Earlier on, it was stated that to realize that I am created is stage one. To realize that I don't own them, although they are created but under my possession, but they are not my property. To this, another second realization of that. That is not enough. As Taya pointed out, that was very interesting, and I was happy to read the comment. We are trading the ownership, claim of ownership. But somebody may say, oh, okay, as the question was asked, I don't own it. I don't own it. I will give you an example from my own life experience. Okay, I say, I'm created. I don't own myself, right, in this world. And I'm hungry. The food is there. Oh, okay, that's good. And I want it. And food is not mine, okay? But it is given to me, all right. But I may eat it in order to satisfy myself, in contrast to what I have already claimed that I don't own myself. What Radva asked, and you said that we discussed this on many occasions, previous recordings, that in the name of God, using it in the name of God. What does it mean? The text will end up explaining and giving some examples of how we can use it in the name of the real owner, because we have free will. Yeah, that's mentioned that we have consciousness, we are aware, but we may accept it, we may not accept it. Even if we accept it, the verse, the Quran says here, look, I want to purchase it in order to preserve it for you and give it back in the form of paradise. Now, when I'm hungry, when I eat the food, although I acknowledge nothing is mine, everything is created by God, do I gain paradise? In my own example, no. I feed myself. Although I claimed on the surface that I don't own myself. Do I claim paradise? No. But the verse says, but you will get paradise in return as a result of this transaction, trade. Although I didn't get paradise, I just temporarily enjoyed myself. But as the text says, actually, this is the war-ridden, tempestuous, turbulent. Everything is stormy. The war-ridden age, it means not only this age, actually. Everybody's age is, there is a war. Where there is a war? Within myself. Although I say I don't own myself, yeah, if I say, even not many people say, but if I say, if I'm really aware of it, still there is a war. What is the war? I want to satisfy myself with the given food. I am a given creature as well. Let's assume that I am conscious of it, but most of the time I am not. Most of the time I am not, but I have to be. Okay, let's say I am conscious of it, and the food is given to me. I eat, but it is a war condition. What does it mean? I am satisfying my need. Or, what is this event for? Why am I in this position? What am I going to gain as a result of this action? Am I gaining, as the verse says now, since we are studying the verse and the question is about the verse, paradise there? No. 5 hours, 6 hours, temporary satisfaction. And war still goes on. And at the end, definitely there is a defeat. I will be defeated. Why? Totally lost it. Everything. Now, control of everything now. Although I don't own anything, but I am in control of it. I can use it in this way or another way. I'm given the opportunity to control, to change the direction of the usage of my property, or for example, my satisfaction, but still war goes on, which is, I want to keep it, and I can't. As one of our friends said, I am keeping the responsibility of satisfaction on my own self, although I don't own myself. That's a contradiction. But how can I get rid of my anxieties? For example, now today I am doing this job, tomorrow I may lose the job, and what will happen to me? And even I got the job, it is a temporary satisfaction. My human side never gets full satisfaction because there is no eternity here. How can I gain it? How can I gain paradise? It means eternal, pleasant life, eternal happiness. How can I gain it? That is the call from the verse, give it to me. Sell it to me means you cannot really satisfy yourself if you just ask for your own satisfaction. You cannot gain satisfaction by yourself. How can I do it? This will be studied towards the end of the whole text.
Dr. Ali, we lost your voice at the end of, we'll study this at the end of the text, or in the whole text.
Understanding who the real owner of this quality, this property, this self, this universe, and in order to acknowledge who it is, as I use it to acknowledge that he is, for example, eating the food, for being able to hold the food and hand moving towards your mouth, and you are chewing it, swallowing it, and the stomach does all these actions, stomach digests it, all these actions need to be given existence by a one who holds on the whole universe and its order. He is the one. So when I am exercising my needs rather than trying to satisfy myself, I acknowledge that the one who made me hungry, the one who created the food, the one who taught me how to benefit from it, how to use it, cook it, and make it delicious, and practice all the beautiful tastes in it, is the one who is the absolute being. He is introducing himself to me. So I will turn the way I use this action, eating the food, and satisfaction I get as a result of eating the food, to the realization of the absoluteness of the creator and the owner of these events. So the absolute one is introducing him to me. That is the purchase. Now I gave up my own false, baseless claim that I'm going to satisfy my need and get the absolute one who is operating in this action, introducing himself to me, get to know him, acknowledge him, and be in contact with him, be thankful to him by realizing he is always with you, introducing himself to you, inviting you to befriend with him. That is paradise. That is the purchase. Otherwise, I'm not going to the market, take my hand or head, put it in the market. It is for sale, or somebody will come and buy it. Of course, it is not. And I don't think no one understood it in this way. But of course, we know that this is a metaphoric teaching of something. We are trying to understand the metaphor in it, because Quran always speaks, or not only Quran, all the scripture speaks, most of it, metaphors, similes, allegories, stories, narrations, and all the examples. Parables, lots of things, as we are studying here, the explanation of the words in the form of a parable. But in fact, these are just the commentary on the Quran, on this verse. And as we go further, we will understand that we are in a war, which is in a world which is, there's a war, and the storms are going on, etc. So is it the war? We have to understand that. Is there a war now? Yes. There's a war in everybody's being. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ali, for helping us make this metaphor, or like bring the essence of the metaphor into the discussion, and clarifying. What I liked about Dr. Ali's comment was, the use of the words, selling and purchasing sort of takes us a little bit away from the conventional uses and understanding of the term to how one can understand them metaphorically, or in the way that is intended in the particular verse. And the word purchase was likened to the idea of introduction to the owner of one's possessions. And selling is the idea, or the process of acknowledging that one is impotent and cannot satisfy their own needs. And this realization is selling, or likened to it in this case. I think we have maybe a couple of minutes, and we can conclude and summarize some main topics or points for the day. And feel free to help me do that too. If you want to type in a word or a statement that you sort of made an impression on you today, or that you will take away the most from today's session, then that will help perhaps share it with everybody else. And I will do as much as I can from the whole class perspective. So very simply, the analogy or the words used in this particular verse are used as we understand to help us understand in our contexts as humans in our daily lives. And hence the words or the idea of a trade or a deal is being mentioned. We possess, but we don't own. And the acknowledgement of attributing the ownership of our possessions to the rightful owner is what is described as this purchase or this this purchase, and the realization that we possess something of value to us, and depends on how you define what is valuable to us, but let's say our consciousness is perhaps the most valuable thing to us. Realizing that that's a possession and something that we don't own is an automatic invitation for us to seek the owner and return the possession to his name, and to use it to our advantage in his name, which is also manifest in the analogy, for example, that you are only transferring the ownership, but the possessions are yours to use and make the most of in his or in the name of the owner, or in acknowledgement of the owner. And as a result of this purchase or the sale, which we do realize the need to do, given our impotency in the conditions of both within ourselves and the world that we live in, the conditions of, let's say, war and tumult and uncertainty. Realizing those conditions and realizing our impotence in the face of those conditions, selling it or entrusting the ownership of our possessions and using them in order to get to know this owner is the path or the, let's say, the window into being in what is described in the verse as paradise, or this state in which one is completely has entrusted their possessions into the with the will of the rightful owner, and realize their impotence and insufficiency in contrast to the owner of one's possessions. So we have a comment. I guess trade, war, purchase, sell are all items or all terms that need to be defined according to context of our topic, not as we understand daily. I think understanding problem rise because of that. I see the point being made here that, obviously making a direct comparison between the way that we use these words in our daily life in practical terms creates limitations to understanding this as a metaphor. And so while we have the experience of, these concepts in our daily lives, in order to understand it as a metaphor, there are other conditions involved, which is, conditions that are exceptional in the case that, this particular experience of a purchase is not of the nature of this universe. And so we have to be aware of the limitations that we can draw from certain vocabularies. So with that, if there are any other parting comments, they were all very helpful and very, I think, key. We have another comment by Alia. She says, when I'm the owner, the doer, I suffer from survivalist mentality struggle. When I experience I'm the trustee done upon by one owner, Rab, in order to know him, there's freedom of knowing I have a sustainer and caregiver. Thank you, Alia, for this, very sequential way of understanding, and it's, the way she's drawn conclusions from how she's, what conclusion one draws or experiences when they think that they are in control or, attach ownership of their possessions or their life to themselves. Then there is this constant feeling of survival and helplessness and a constant struggle. But and it reminds me of this the very frequently, I guess, cited example, and perhaps recently I've been around some babies, and I can see how, you look at a baby's condition, and really they have nothing to worry about when they are fed and taken care of. I think they're enjoying every little simple pleasure of life to the fullest, and don't have to worry about anything. Whereas us adults are, even when we are fed and at rest, our brains are, or in our minds, we are constantly worrying or thinking about the next thing and the next thing. So thank you for this string of statements that helps us conclude. So that's, I think over here we'll conclude with the dua today, and thank you all for your participation. I think it was very helpful and very well participated. And inshallah, next week, our moderator will continue the discussion and the reading on this topic. So with that, thank you, everybody. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim wa akhiru da'wahum anil hamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Al-Fatiha.